Hey guys, Frank with Tithely. Great to see you again this morning. We are here. This is another episode of Modern Church Leader. This is actually our live show. So once a week, usually on Mondays, we do a live show of Modern Church Leader where I interview pastors and church leaders from churches of all shapes and sizes, talking about kind of ministry in the trenches. So really excited. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this. I know we get a few hundred folks every episode watching live. So grateful that you're here. Grateful that you've joined us. Like always, we love to give away some Apple AirPods during the show. So leave a comment, like the show on YouTube, ask a question. If you've got questions for our guests while we're here today, definitely pop them in the comments so that we can pop those out and try to answer some of those live. Definitely excited about today's show. We are here with a great guest. We're going to talk about the role of an executive pastor, which I don't know when that role was actually coined or when that kind of title was coined, but it's not that old, but you're starting to see it more and more in churches. So we're going to dig in and talk about what that role is, how it interacts with the senior pastor, how it interacts with the staff, what are the responsibilities, and all those kind of things. So super excited for today's show and for our guest. And there we go, Dave Blough.
Frank.
Hey, how's it going, Dave?
It is going awesome. I'm really excited about being here today. Thank you.
Yes. Coming to us all the way from?
I'm right now in Windsor, Connecticut.
In Connecticut,
So
okay.
It's a little bit north of our capital city, Hartford, Connecticut.
Yeah. Very cool. So Dave, you are the executive pastor at Wintonbury Church.
I am.
And you've been in that role. We were talking prior to the show. You've been in that role for about 8 years.
Yes,
and,
my 8-year anniversary was on July 31st.
Yes, come on. That's pretty cool.
It is.
Did you live out there prior to, or did you move out there for the job?
I've been in Connecticut pretty much all of my life. And
okay.
So, and then I was at this church for a while. So right now, I think 16 years I've been at the church, and then 8 of those have been as executive pastor.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. Well, I mean, tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got into ministry. And I don't know if this was your first ministry role, but just talk to us about how you got into ministry, how you got to Wintonbury, and then we'll dive into the role of an executive pastor.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Well, a long time ago, I actually worked in public and private sector. And I worked with a very large insurance company. And during that time, I was meeting one-on-one with different folks, leading Bible studies, and just kind of excited about that. And then it came about where I think I want to just learn about being more equipped. And so I registered for Moody Bible Institute, and I started going there. And after several years of doing that, it just seemed like the Lord was maybe opening up some opportunities. And so I had different roles in the church, and using my gifts of administration and helps in particular. And one day, I think it was in 2010, I was doing a ministry internship at the church, and I heard about the role of executive pastor for the first time. And I was like, boy, this is really interesting, because at the time I was looking back at 20 years of history about what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was all these different skills that the Lord was bringing to me was actually building up, and it looked like a resume for an executive pastor.
Wow.
After all of those years. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. But while I was at my company at the time, I was doing very well. And I really enjoyed what I was doing, quite comfortable in terms of my salary. And I absolutely had no reason whatsoever to leave the comforts of that.
Yeah.
And
right.
Our church decided that they needed an executive pastor. And so, but I really didn't say anything about that in particular to my family. Although I felt like the Lord was speaking to my heart that this may be something that God would want me to do.
Mm-hmm.
And one day, my wife, Cheryl, she was listening to a guest speaker at our church. And there was something that he said that really spoke to her heart. And so she said, you know, Dave, I really think that you should apply for this executive pastor position.
Really? And you guys hadn't talked?
We knew about the position there. I didn't express like, this is something that I should really be doing, because you don't go into something like that without you and your wife agreeing about it. And plus we have 7 children. And so, that's a big family to
That's massive. Yes.
Right.
I have 3 boys. 7 is a whole, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So went through we prayed about it. We had people coming up to me that didn't know whether I was interested or not, saying, hey, this seems like it's something that maybe you should apply for.
Mm-hmm. And
I actually turned that back on a couple people, saying, well, what about you applying? Because they were people that were kind of doing the same thing that I was doing. And so we ended up applying for it, and I got the position, which I was super excited about that. And what ended up happening with that first month, we had our entire infrastructure break down. We had, I think, 2 people died in the congregation. One of our staff people left, and that was in the very first few weeks that I started that role as pastor. I'm like, oh man.
Okay.
And it was like a 42% cut in salary as well. So
wow.
It was intense.
Well, I mean, you look like your spirits are up and that you're loving it. So
I love it. I do love it.
Yeah. I mean, you were mentioning, again, prior to us going live, how, every day goes by like a blink of an eye and the week's done and you're like, this is awesome. I still got stuff I need to get done, but you're loving it. So I think that's, I don't know, it's almost the sign of a great fit professionally with people, right? When you kind of do the work and the day flies by, but you're looking forward to the next day and you're looking forward to the next week. So very, very
cool.
And
a lot of this is, Frank, so I'd never been executive pastor before, and I wasn't ever in a full-time ministry position before. So I find that a lot of times I'm in this position where I talk to God. It's like John 15. So without Christ, I can't do anything at all.
Yeah.
I feel like if I'm not that branch on that vine, completely abiding in him, there's stuff that comes up I just don't know about. So I ask him about it. And time after time again, he brings the wisdom, he brings the circumstances about, to make things happen. So it's more about him than it is about me as executive pastor. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that position. Yeah. So if in business terms, I would look at the lead pastors like the CEO, and then I would look at the executive pastor as the COO. Okay. So day-to-day operations, leading staff, oversight of the ministries, everything that is happening on the campus and that needs to take place to kind of, in a sense, keep the lights on would be one part of it. Yeah. And then also, as the Lord is speaking to our lead pastor, Andre, I'm there to fully support what the Lord is speaking to him and our elders, and to move that in the direction that God wants us to be able to go. Yeah. So I came from a position where I was a project director. So I had experience as managing large projects and gathering people together, putting together plans, going over details and things like that. And that's a lot of what this position does. It's a little bit different than other churches, because if you look at the size of our church, we probably have about 500 people that are, I'd say, regularly involved in the church, and anywhere between 350 and 400 that would show up pre-COVID, to our church. So typically, you would see executive pastors in larger churches, like 800 to several thousand. Right. With dozens of staff and operating at that level. We just happened to, for what we were doing in the church and where we were headed, we needed the kind of skill set, I believe, that the Lord had built up over the years for us to be able to use in that. Right. So so it's having an understanding of all of those things, including technology too.
Yeah. What would you put as the top sort of five, if you're looking at an executive pastor's resume or job description, like how would it read, or what would, maybe the top 3 to 5 things be that a church should be looking for in an executive pastor?
This is a person that should be able to lead. I think should be able to know the people well. One of the executive pastors that I connect with, who's my mentor, he told me recently about you must connect. Without a connection, you're not going to have any impact. So it is connecting with people and doing that regularly. The ability to be able to lead staff and to have the type of direction where everybody is on board with that and understands that. In our case, it was important also to be able to understand on the business side of it. Some churches have an executive pastor and a business pastor. In our role, I happen to work on both of them.
Okay.
So understanding about things like negotiating contracts and making sure that we have the right things and tools that we need for our particular church. We actually have, I was just going to mention this a bit, just because, Tithely has been important to us as well. Tithely is one of many, many technologies that we have. So over the past 8 years, and I'd say particularly the first 6 years, completely redid the entire infrastructure of the church.
Yeah.
And everything is cloud-based, and including, phone systems and things like that. So when COVID hit, we were able to do what we needed to do because everything was outside, of the church, and we were ready and prepared for that.
Right. Technology, like finance, are you involved in kind of the finance side, budgeting?
Yes.
Casting, planning, those kinds of things?
Yeah, we have a finance team, which consists of a corporate team. It's myself and a couple of other members, a couple of guys that are really good with numbers and business.
Right.
We have a financial secretary. We have a bookkeeper. Every September, we kick off our budget, and September through December, we go over that with a fine-tooth comb and prepare for voting the next year. So budget is an extremely important process as part of my role as well.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I mean, there's like all the things, and I guess we're kind of jumping into a little bit. And you even described a little bit about how like you and the senior pastor work together, which I think is cool. What about like in this role, either in your direct experience or maybe in the experience of talking to other XPs, what do you see XPs doing that they shouldn't be doing? Like things that they're focused on that just is a waste of time or not where they should be putting their energy?
Yeah, I want to tell you that I think it's important for, first of all, for XPs to be meeting with each other before I get into what they shouldn't be doing, because we have, we're part of a conference called Converge. And our district executive minister, Tim, leads that for the Northeast. And he has gathered together pastors. And then we have another organization that has gathered together executive pastors on a monthly basis.
Okay.
And so we talk to each other. What's happening in the Northeast?
Right.
What are you doing? And kind of asking the same question. I feel like what executive pastors shouldn't be doing is they shouldn't be saying yes to everything. So, if the church is inclined to, let's do this, it's new and different, we heard about another church doing this, or, just kind of adding on instead of focusing on those things that are really, most important and essential. So if you know what your mission and your vision is, and the way to get there, you don't want to distract that a lot with all these other new things that are coming on.
Right.
Now, there may be things that we have to replace. That would be, a different story. Like, we don't have our in-service services, so we had to replace that with a different type of service.
Yeah.
So we needed to refocus on that.
Right. Yeah.
The other thing is, I think that some executive pastors, may take things either, personally, just because of, there's such a wide range of expectations. Like there's one group that says you should be doing this, and then there's another group that's the exact opposite. And so you're kind of taking that all in and figuring that, hey, maybe we need to make everybody happy here. But it's first listening to the Lord with that, not taking it personally and looking for his wisdom, to make those decisions, for the church and working with the leadership, because executive pastors also, we're not alone. We hopefully we work with other pastors in the church.
Right.
And then in our case, we have a body of elders, that have responsibility as well.
Right. How do you, you talked a little bit, there's a great question about kind of the skills that a pastor needs to learn in order to prepare to be an XP. So if someone were saying, I want to go down the path to become an executive pastor, what skills and how would they start to pick those up if they weren't going the corporate, like you kind of went corporate world and learned a bunch of things and then brought that into the church? Is there another way? If you kind of know, I want to go work for a church as an XP,
right?
These things.
Well, I heard from another pastor. He had said, before somebody enters in, to look to become a pastor, he thought that they should have a business degree. And this is a missionary who serves out in the Ivory Coast. Right. He thought it would be essential because he's starting up micro businesses. So understanding business is really important. It was so practical for me to have the type of business experience that I did, that I'm thinking that maybe the best route is, if they do have leadership gifting, that could be, worked at and kind of proved out in the church. Yeah. That should be part of it. There's also, even though it's like executive, it's still shepherding. So I have a love for people and I want to shepherd them. So it's understanding how to do that well. Now there are courses that you can take. There are degrees that you can get. I'm finding that the internships, would be really essential, because even though I was working full time in another company, I took a ministry internship in our church. Okay. And I thought that was really vital for me to be able to understand that. So the more that you're in a leadership position, the more exposure that you have to really practical day-to-day things would be good. I'd also say that talk to another executive pastor, look for a mentoring relationship, ask if you can help in any way, just to see if God is leading in that direction. The practical is really, really essential.
Right. Sean asked a good question. He said, what should a lead pastor do if he needs an XP but can't afford one? And I feel like you just kind of, I'd love to hear your thoughts, but I think you also said something that would apply is you can have these internships. So you could have kind of an XP or administrative type of internship role where someone comes in and, it can be a low paying or even non-paid kind of thing. Right. And it's for people that might have interest in this kind of role. So you kind of get some, and you're not really paying much for it. Right. And you're allowing people to kind of come in and learn and see if it's a good fit. Right. So any other thoughts there about if you can't afford one yet, if it's not in the budget, how should you progress down that path of hiring one?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I had a friend of mine who took on the role of XP while he was working full time in another job. And so that was the process he was thinking through. Yeah. So that way the church could benefit. And then ultimately he ended up, being paid part-time in that executive pastor position. Okay. Right. While he was full-time. It really depends on the kind of job that you have as well. I think it's great to be able to, give to the church, use your gift to give to the church. Right. Especially in this role, you probably, 10 to 20 hours would be wonderful, be able to do, because I'm sure as well as others that, it's not a 9-to-5 job. Yeah. There's a ton of hours. And so any kind of help that could be, given, for the goal even of being able to serve in that capacity is great. Right. And I'm sure that executive pastor in that church is probably saying, who's going to follow me? who's going to be the next person that can be, kind of groomed for that position. So that became cool too.
This idea of kind of in the vein, executive pastor to me is far more business oriented than the senior pastor or even like the teaching pastors or the ministry pastors.
Yeah.
But this concept of church as a business is foreign or I don't know, like almost looked down upon in a sense. Talk to me about that. Like how do you think about church as a business? Because we know it's not a business, right? So that's not what we're saying.
Right.
But how do you think about that? How do you talk to people about that when you maybe run into conversations where people kind of take the other side? It's not a business. It's about
Sure.
people, So I don't know. I'd love your thoughts about church as a business.
Sure. So maybe I'm thinking a little bit differently, but we have property. We've got to keep that property up to date. We have people that are sacrificing, so they're tithing and expecting us to be good stewards of what they're tithing. We are making business decisions for the church. So, the church is you, Frank. It's me. It's the people.
Right.
You just can't ignore taking care of the church from a business and practical sense. I was talking to our lead pastor the other day, and we were out visiting folks on a Sunday afternoon after church services, and we came across a property, and the property, it was a big complex, okay, but part of the property wasn't being taken care of, so weeds were growing up, and buildings looked like they were about ready to fall down and fall apart.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't taken care of. And soon it'll be a hazard, and it'll have to be bulldozed down.
Right.
So it's an example for us as the church to listen. We've got to take care of every aspect of it. There are business things. People are most important. Like I was telling you before, we must have that contact in order to have impact. But if you don't take care of time with your people or time with the things that are related with business, it's just going to fall apart. It just doesn't happen by itself.
Magically. Yeah.
It doesn't magically happen. And didn't God tell us that we are one body, many members?
Yeah.
So we need each other in order to pull all of that off. And even on the business side, it's not all on me. I'm working with a corporate team. I'm working with elders. We're having to make decisions. That decision may be hiring people. That decision may be, a direction in which we are going that involves people. And then a significant part is funds coming in.
Right.
So we want to be, the Bible talks about stewardship. We want to be good stewards of all of that. And so business is involved in that.
Yeah. I mean, you've mentioned a bunch of things. It's like there's staffing and hiring, kind of the HR part of the world. There's budgeting and planning. There's, people giving and kind of the revenue side of things and how that's managed and how that money's used and how it's, how the overseeing of that money happens. There's the building and taking care of the building. There's, the technology stuff you mentioned.
Yes.
Right. All the tech that you're going to use. And it's like, there's all these pieces. Not that I went through seminary, but just in lots of conversations over the years, it strikes me as pastors don't learn that stuff going through seminary, right?
They don't. They don't.
The focus of it. So you come into, with, planting a church or jumping into a role like that, but not having a whole, whatever percentage of the skill set that is needed to effectively run a church. And I think that's where this XP role, or I've heard it called other, director of administration.
Sure.
Like there's variations, I think, on this name, or sometimes they've got the secretary and the bookkeeper and the crew of people that all make up the work that's being done. Almost like the XP comes in to help oversee all of that stuff so that the pastoral staff can more focus, not that everybody's not focused on people, but the pastoral staff can more focus on the people and the teaching and those kinds of things, with their time.
So I was just saying, it just made me think about as you're talking about that when it comes to relationship, especially Andre is the lead pastor and myself, we have different gifting.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to be a lead pastor.
Right. Right.
And he does not want to be an executive pastor.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the perfect fit, right? In a
It is
sense.
the perfect fit because one, I love what I'm doing and he loves what he's doing. And so you think about all of those details that I can take off of Andre's plate and off of the way that he's thinking about things so that he can focus on, his role as being the main leader of the church.
Right.
So that is really important. I know that I've heard about some situations where, somebody comes in as a youth pastor or somebody comes in as executive pastor and their goal is to be a lead pastor. And I don't think that that's a path thing. God is calling me to be an executive pastor. I'm staying on that. And, I love his word and I love discipling people. I love the shepherding of it. So I am a pastor. I'm a pastor who also loves to do the business side of it as well.
The business side.
Yeah.
So what's something in your 8 years as an XP, what's something that you've done, or it could be a couple of things, but what's something you've done that you've seen have a really big positive impact? And I'm kind of leading towards maybe what's something that people could take from that and start doing today. Like it could be structurally or operationally or whatever, but something that you've seen have a really big impact in your role as an XP.
I think there's a few ways to answer that. One is I find that there are some, little things that are done that I'll end up getting. Somebody will, write a note to me, like an actual handwritten note.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll mention specifically either it was something that I said or something that I did that was essential for that particular time of their life. And so I consider that like a movement of God to do that.
Right.
Then there are other things that I think have, bigger impact in terms of just allowing our church to be able to move and function. So, I'd say with the technology of the church, when I came into it and that first few weeks, the entire infrastructure went down. To have to reassess every piece of the infrastructure. So networking, security, storage, online web presence, online giving. And I think at one point I have over 100 technology accounts at this point.
Wow.
Over 100.
That's a lot.
So that I'm personally keeping track of.
Right.
So I find that's probably because infrastructure and technology was my background in terms of directing projects. So that's probably been helpful there. But it has allowed us today to enter into something that, we weren't prepared to do before. So if we go back to COVID, it was the first week of March, and we were making a decision to say on a Friday, are we going to meet in person or are we going to live stream?
Right.
And we didn't have anything, together specifically for the live streaming other than we made the decision. We thought it was safer to do that. First week, we went with the technology and, we had a few hiccups with it.
As did everybody.
The next few weeks, we went with a different technology, had some more hiccups with it. And literally what God was doing through that, Frank, was we would be 2 minutes away from going live and it wasn't working. 2 minutes away. And then at the last second, it would come together. So, that's God's work in it. And now what we do is now we have a whole different setup that's working much better. Mm-hmm. And we have somebody that's doing video production. We're putting things together. We're streaming to 3 places at once. And last Sunday we actually met and we did a drive-in in our parking lot, and we did a separate live stream at the same time. So we've gone from struggling to, something that is much better over time.
Right.
And I do believe a lot of it has to do with familiarity with technology, looking at something that comes up and just God's wisdom and that gifting together to try to have a good outcome. So
yeah.
I guess those would be a couple examples.
What when are you guys back in person at all? It sounds like no, based on the drive-in. You did the drive-in thing, which my church tried. I guess 2 weekends ago, we did a drive-in service.
Okay, yeah.
So interesting, but it sounds like you're not back in the building.
Right. We've just made the decision for trying to do what's right for Wintonbury. So, in talking to other executive pastors, they're doing different things. So some are meeting in person. Now in Connecticut, we have the governor has decided that their executive orders that are in place. We're still under phase 2 guidelines, what they call. So there would be a limitation to the number of people that could come in. We're prepared to have people come in. We just aren't ready to say it's the safe time for people to come in.
Right.
So what we've done is we've had a drive-by where people just come in, and we had different stations along the way. We've actually had a pretty big lawn, so it was almost like a picnic setup, and we had an outdoor service there, and then we just had a drive-in service. So and that seemed to be, for us, there are about 100 people attending, between 100 and 120 people attending the outdoor event, which is double what we'd be able to have at an indoor event.
Right. And that sounds like that's about a third of a normal, pre-COVID normal attendance that are showing up to those things.
I'd say, 25 to 30% of what we see there. And then we also see, and then we see, people who are, online, watching the live stream.
How are you thinking about when this is all over, or we reach some kind of, different normal where church is allowed back in the building, and yet you've spent all this time getting better at live streaming, and you're probably seeing some, interesting results, and you want to keep doing that. How are you going to keep doing a great live stream production and go back into the building?
We created a live stream team.
Okay.
And so we've got 9 people on the team right now. We are in the process of preparing for testing. So by mid-August, we're expecting to have everything in order. We'll have somebody running production. We'll have somebody running one of the components specifically of the production.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have people running the audio side. We've made decisions on the technology. We've purchased everything that we need to do it. So now it's a familiarity for how to execute that production. And what we'll do is we will be live streaming that service.
Yeah.
So we won't we may start out with a separate live stream from the actual on-site meeting. But our hope is to have, different phases. So we'll phase in with essential, the things we absolutely have to do to run a live stream. Then we'll add on to it as we gain experience over time.
Right.
So it's kind of like almost like in business terms, like a soft launch.
Yep.
Kind of do something along those lines.
Yeah.
But we think that's the best way to go.
Yeah. I mean, I've just been talking to churches, and, churches of your size or certainly smaller, trying to do both things well, is when you're just doing online, you can kind of focus everything there and not worry about, but then as soon as you got to go back in the building, doing that well, but also doing the online thing is going to get hard unless you find a way to stop. And it sounds like you kind of answered in my head, like kind of my thinking from the beginning. You're like, oh, we have a team of 9 that's going to work on this. Probably some volunteers and, different.
It's basically all volunteers.
There you go. 9 people, but you got a crew that's like going to own just the online part. And
they're committed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the key. When I talked about one body, many members, the church needs to understand this. Not everything could be a paid position.
Right.
Like the church runs, the power of it is the Holy Spirit through its volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would love to pay everybody. I would love to have
Right.
that expertise to do that, but I'm trusting God that He's going to bring those volunteers in place, and that we're going to do what He wants to do, and I'm fine with whatever outcome He has.
Right.
I
Yeah.
totally trust that, but we
Yeah.
need you volunteers
Yeah. Amen. Amen.
over all the churches. Come
Said
on.
every church leader on the okay, one last quick question. You brought up giving kind of, earlier in the conversation.
Yeah.
So how has giving been for you guys through the pandemic and church online and all the crazy that's going on?
Yeah. Well, Frank, when we started with Tithely, I told you how different Wintonbury was.
Yeah.
And so
You've been a customer for a couple of years now.
I think it's 3, isn't it?
3. Yeah. Yeah. I have to go look at, but I know it's been a while. It's like,
Yeah. You were my first contact.
yeah. Back in the day.
Back in the day. By the way, when we were moving from, a local bank, to Tithely, you said, seriously, it's only going to take 5 minutes to set you up. And I had my doubts about it. Dude, it took 5 minutes to set up.
It's true. It's true. Yes, absolutely.
So what happened with us is, like, we have a lot of people that like to just pay by check or pay through their bank,
Yeah.
or drop off at the office. And I'm just so surprised about that. So we saw in the first week, it looked like it dropped about, I think it was 40%, the
Yeah.
giving in the first week. And then after that, it returned to normal.
Okay.
And so there was a little bit more on the online side, but people realized that since we weren't going to be gathering, that they could continue to do what they were doing.
Right.
And so we have this mix over at Wintonbury. And so we praise God that, our budget is like there, right? And then our giving is below the budget, but we've been keeping expenses below the giving.
Right. Right.
But we praise God that it's not like that first week. Like
Right.
that first week, it was like,
Uh-oh.
what are we going to do now?
Yeah. And I think that was, I've heard that a lot, right? Like at the very beginning, week 1, maybe week 2, there was a crazy dip. And then a lot of churches have seen giving actually exceed their budget.
That's cool.
Certainly have come up from the, first week or 2 drop when everybody was just in chaos. Like, what are we going to do, and figuring it out. But yeah, we've fairly commonly heard giving stabilized, and in some cases kind of has gone above previous, and obviously have heard, mass amounts have moved online.
Which is great.
Yeah. But also, people are still mailing in their checks and doing things like that too.
Yeah.
So churches supporting all the ways is
right.
important.
Yeah.
So,
which I love and appreciate.
Yeah.
Because people understand. Well, also just a little bit differently on Wintonbury's side, maybe not so different, but 20% of our giving goes directly out to missions.
Okay.
So we just strongly have a heart for missions, and people are right behind that.
Yeah. Love that. Well, Dave, where can folks go? What's the website? How can they check out the live stream and what you guys are doing online?
Yeah, you can go to wintonbury.org, WINTONBURY. And then we pretty much set everything on the homepage for the things that we want people to readily get to.
Check out.
We do live stream on YouTube, Facebook, and Vimeo. So you can check us out on any of those places too.
Love it.
I'd love to see anybody there.
Yeah. So if you're watching the show, definitely check out the website. I think it's cool just to support churches. So go to their YouTube channel, give it a like, help them grow the audience there. And just appreciate you guys for joining us. Dave, thanks for coming on as a guest and just sharing about the role of an XP and just some of what you've learned and your wisdom in that spot. Super appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. And if there's an XP out there that wants to talk to me, I am more than willing to talk to them, mentor, just be part of that. I am totally behind doing that 100%.
Love it. Love it. Drop us a note in the comments if you want to connect with Dave. We'll find a way to connect the two of you. And Dave, I'll drop him your email or something like that.
Awesome.
And yeah, if you're still around, give the show a like, share it with friends. Definitely subscribe to the channel. And like always, we will pick an active participant in the comments to give away some AirPods, and you'll find out about that in the newsletter. So make sure to check out the newsletter, and we will see you guys next Monday. Thanks, everybody.
God bless you all.